let me return in closing to the domain index in my opening example, the digital age. How might we understand what this feels and looks like in indigenous communities in remote regions of the world where access to telephone landlines can still be difficult? And of course, this is true in the US as well as other parts of the world. As a fellow scholar, Kyra Lanzelius asks in her 2006 collection, Native on the Net, can the info superhighway be a fast track to greater empowerment for the historically disenfranchised, or do they risk becoming roadkill, casualties of hypermedia and the drive to electronically map everything? Recent developments give some insight into what it might actually mean for indigenous subjects and how digital technologies might indeed be indigenized, from the design of hardware and software, as I talked about with the Ara Eradija project or with Asuma TV, to the questions raised in the first example regarding protocols in new media environments. Although indigenous peoples are certainly proportionally underrepresented in cyberspace for obvious reasons such as economic poverty, technological inexperience, linguistic isolation, political repression, cultural resistance, etc., the internet has nonetheless vastly extended traditional networks of information and communication. Indigenous digital media have raised important questions about the politics and circulation of knowledge in a number of levels. Within communities, this may be about who has had access to and understanding of these kinds of media technologies, who has the rights to know, tell, and circulate certain stories and images. Within nation-states, media are linked to larger battles over cultural citizenship, racism, sovereignty, and land rights, as well as struggles over funding, airspace, and satellites, networks of broadcasting and distribution, access to archives, and digital broadband services that may or may not be available to indigenous communities. And I once again turn to a conversation with Norm Cohn, who's been working with the Nunavut-based collective at Asuma for over 2 decades, who articulated the extremities of this kind of media stratification while at the same time emphasizing the importance of the possibility that it offers to put digital technologies to use in the radically different circumstances that a group like Asuma represents. So to quote him, at present, Inuit and other indigenous people are on the brink of being left out of the most important new communication technology since the printing press. Almost everything in the 21st century will be conducted at least partly by internet. Being left off even for another decade or two is like linguistic, cultural, and economic death sentence. Asuma's commitment to create Asuma TV, even in the face of these disadvantages, is our recognition of how access to the internet cannot be negotiable for indigenous communities struggling to survive. This is particularly the case since the new 2.0 multimedia internet actually offers a practical tool, especially suitable for oral cultures in remote regions. Unlike the literary medium of print or the 1.0 print-based internet, which is all about reading, in which oral cultures traditionally have been disadvantaged by participating in their second languages, the 2.0 audiovisual internet advantages people using sophisticated oral and visual skill sets in their own first languages. The end of his quote. So such efforts are evidence of how indigenous media projects formed over the last decades are now positioned at the conjuncture of a number of historical developments, which include the circuits opened by new media technologies, ranging from satellites to compressed video and cyberspace, as well as the ongoing legacies of indigenous activism worldwide. Most recently, by a generation comfortable with media and concerned with making their own media representations as a mode of cultural creativity and social action. They also represent the complex and differing ways that encompassing settler states have responded to these developments, the opportunities of media and the pressures of activism, and have entered into new relationships with the indigenous nations that they encompass. So I'd like to conclude on a note of cautious optimism. The evidence of the growth and creativity of indigenous media over the last 2 decades, whatever problems may have accompanied it, is nothing short of remarkable, whether working out of local grounded communities in remote areas or broader regional or national bases, as part of the development of a national cinema, for example. While indigenous media activism alone certainly cannot unseat the power asymmetries which underwrite the profound inequalities that continue to shape indigenous worlds, the issues and images that their media interventions raise about their cultural futures are on a continuum with broader issues of self-determination, cultural rights, and political sovereignty, and may help bring some attention to these profoundly interconnected concerns. While activism and policy concerns initially shaped much of indigenous media, it's important to acknowledge the current range of genre being produced. These range from drama, current affairs, political analysis, humor, cooking shows, variety shows, music videos, and sports, and experimental media. Additionally, the technologies being deployed span low-format video, radio, satellite, cable to Web 2.0 to feature film and television. As Indigenous media has grown more robust over the last 2 decades, in part through the increasing convergence of these media forms, it makes it hard to know where to draw the boundary marking television from film from web-based work. A remarkably diverse array of work suggests that this synthesis of media technology with new forms of collective self-production has much to offer Indigenous communities and the world as they redefine themselves and future generations in the 21st century. Thank you.